Goldman Sachs just told their own clients not to expect a rate cut until next year. BofA pushed their forecast even further out to next summer.
If you've been waiting for rates to bail you out, that wait just got a lot longer than anybody wants to admit.
Which is exactly why today we're talking about why renting, yes, I said renting, right now might actually be the smartest move you can make. And why that's actually great news if you're one of the people who are buying anyway.
We're going to walk through a real example today. A couple people we talk to on a regular basis almost every week and show you exactly which side of the decision you should be on. But before we go any further, can we acknowledge how ridiculous this probably sounds coming from us?
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you watched last week's episode, right?
Because last week, we were the guys telling you the window is closing. Rates could move higher. Home prices could keep moving higher. Get on the elevator before it leaves without you. That was us.
That's right. But now, 7 days later, we're sitting here telling you renting might actually be winning.
And here's the funny part. We still believe what we told you last week. Rates can move higher, property values can keep moving higher, and for the right buyer, that window really can be getting smaller. But there's something I'll say all the time. The math still has to work. The math will tell you what to do. The math will tell you the story. And sometimes, the math just doesn't work.
Yeah, and that's where this couple comes in that we've been talking about. We talk to these two almost every week right now, and they're in their mid-30s, solid jobs, decent savings, and they've been renting the same one-bedroom apartment for about 3 years. And they spent those 3 years watching the market move around. Prices went up, rates went up, affordability got harder, and somewhere along the way, they became convinced that if they don't buy in the next 30 days, they're not going to be able to buy forever.
And here's what makes them interesting. These aren't people who haven't done their homework. They've actually run the spreadsheets more than most people we talk to. They've looked at the payment. They've looked at their savings. They've looked at what they can afford. They have done the math.
That's right. They have done their homework and research, but they've also heard, you better buy now. You're going to miss it. You better be able to afford it now because you're not going to do it later. Over and over and over. And eventually, even with a perfectly good spreadsheet sitting right in front of you, fear starts sounding like math. And it's not.
And you're right, it's not. That's the trap. Because the spreadsheet is telling them one thing, and the fear of missing out is telling them something completely different.
Yeah, it's fear over facts. We talk that all the time. So here's what their spreadsheet actually says. They're paying about $2,000 a month in rent right now. Buying a house they're looking at today with a mortgage and taxes and insurance puts them closer to $2,900. That is $900 more every month, almost $11,000 more a year.
And that's where I come right back to what I said a minute ago. The math still has to work. Forget the elevator for a second. Forget where rates might be 6 months from now. Forget whether the house appreciates another 2%. Can these people comfortably take another $900 out of their life every single month and put it towards housing? Because qualifying for it isn't the question, but being comfortable living with it is the question.
That's facts, Manley. I mean, it's all about lifestyle, and it's all about what are you willing to compromise. And pretending that $900 difference doesn't matter, that's how somebody ends up in the poorhouse in year one. Hello, Top Ramen, 7 days a week. That's not strategy. That's fear making a financial decision for them. And fear is a terrible cosigner on a 30-year loan.
So, when I say the math will tell you the story, this is what I mean. For this couple, the spreadsheet was already telling the story. They just weren't trusting it.
And maybe that's the part we didn't spend enough time on last week. The window can be closing, and it still might not even be your window.
Exactly. If the math works and you're ready, I still believe there's a real argument for getting on that elevator now. But I'm not going to tell somebody who's comfortably paying $2,000 in rent that they should suddenly spend $2,900. That's a 43% increase, just because they're afraid of the elevator might leave without them. The math still has to work. And for these two right now, it just doesn't.
Yeah, and it's not just these two. It's like a generation we are seeing, an onslaught of people just their lifestyle and the math is not mathing, which is how two mortgage guys who told you to buy last week ended up telling somebody to keep renting this week.
But here's where this gets harder. Just because the math doesn't work harder for them today doesn't mean waiting is free either. Rates aren't waiting for them. Home prices aren't necessarily waiting for them either. And inflation sure as hell isn't waiting for them as well.
Yeah, it's going to continue to go forward. So now we've got to answer the other side of this. If they don't buy today, what does waiting actually cost them tomorrow?
Seize the day. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may.
Let's start with the thing everybody keeps waiting for. Mortgage rates. The Fed's own outlook has kept sliding. And the war is a big reason why. Every time energy prices spike from the conflict, it creates another inflation problem. And inflation is exactly what makes it harder for the Feds to cut rates.
That's right. And here's what some of the biggest banks are telling their own clients. Goldman Sachs, for instance, pushed its rate cut prediction to June and December of next year. BofA is now talking about July and September of 2027. That's not a 6-month rescue a lot of people have been holding out for. When the people who get paid to forecast this stuff push their own bets back that far, you've got to at least pay attention to it.
Let's go back to our couple. Let's say their entire plan is, we'll just keep renting until we get a 5% mortgage rate. Okay, when is that? 6 months, 12 months, 18, 2027, end of 2027? We don't know, and neither does anyone else.
Yeah, and if anyone says they do, they are flat out lying. And while they're waiting, the house isn't necessarily sitting there waiting for them. The median existing home price nationally is now over $440,000. That's up almost 2% from a year ago. Even with mortgage rates sitting above 6.5%, think about that. We had expensive money and home prices still didn't crash.
Yeah, still didn't crash. Inventory is sitting around 4.6 months. That's better. Absolutely. But we're still not looking at some giant national oversupply of homes. So, if your strategy was, I'll wait for rates to fall and home prices to collapse, that market hasn't exactly cooperated with your plan.
Yeah, and rent doesn't stand still forever either. If our couple's $2,000 rent grows at around 2% a year, it's a little over $2,100 by 2028. Not catastrophic, but not nothing.
So, that's the other side of the math. Buying has a cost, but waiting has a cost too. And I think sometimes people treating waiting like it's not a decision, it is. You're making a decision every month you keep renting. The question isn't whether you're doing something useful with your time.
Yeah, and that's a huge distinction. There's a difference between renting on purpose and sitting frozen. And if you're going to rent another 12 months, what happens during those 12 months? Does your down payment get bigger? Do you pay off a car? Do you get rid of credit cards? And does your income increase? Does your credit improve? Do you put yourself in a position where that $900 gap becomes $500 or $300?
Because that's how the math changes. Not by wishing, by changing the inputs.
Yeah, and there's another piece to it as well. If you're building a down payment, you need to think about where that money is sitting. Inflation is still above the Fed's target. Money sitting around earning almost nothing is losing purchasing power. At the same time, your house money probably shouldn't be sitting somewhere widely volatile either, especially in an environment where one headline can move markets overnight.
That's actually part of what got through to this couple. They realized the question wasn't really, do we buy or do we rent? It was, do we buy today? Or do we rent for another year with purpose? That's a completely different question.
Rent?
Not now.
Listen, it's a free country. It's not rent-free country.
So waiting for rates alone doesn't fix it.
Panic buying doesn't fix it either.
No, and waiting for a housing crash, it definitely doesn't fix that.
So what does?
Simple. It's your numbers.
Exactly. The math. Not ours, not the internet, your math.
So after we went through all of this with them, you know what we told them. Don't buy the house.
Think about that for a second. You're listening to a mortgage podcast hosted by two guys who make their living helping people get mortgages. And we're telling somebody not to get one.
Yeah, because they could qualify. We could get them approved and we could probably get them into the house. But that's not the same thing as saying they should buy it.
That's a really important distinction. Qualifying for a $2,900 a month payment doesn't mean you're comfortable paying that $2,900 a month. The underwriting guidelines don't live your life. You do.
Yeah, and for this couple, renting, it really won, at least right now for them. They're not giving up on home ownership. They're not sitting around waiting for someone to rescue them. They're giving themselves another year to get into a stronger position.
They're not settling. They're sequencing. And I really like that distinction because if renting is the move for you right now, do it on purpose. Stack the down payment. Get rid of the debt. Know your numbers. Get pre-approved so you know exactly what reality looks like instead of guessing. Watch your specific housing market, not just the national headlines. Make the year accomplish something.
Yeah, don't let sitting around fall by the wayside with nothing that helps you in the long term. And here's where today's story takes another turn because our couple just stepped out of the market. They're not making an offer. They're not at Saturday's open house, and they're not competing with you who's in the market.
And neither are the thousands of people making that exact same calculation. And that is where this gets really interesting for the buyer whose math actually does work.
That's right, because everybody keeps talking about high mortgage rates like they only create a negative. They don't. They also remove competition.
And fewer buyers can create leverage, more negotiating room, seller concessions, closing cost credits, rate buydowns, repairs, maybe even something we haven't seen enough over the last few years. The ability to walk away from a house you don't love.
Yeah, someone's pain point is someone else's motivation and entry to a market that's not saturated. That's a huge one because when you're competing against 15 other offers, you're not negotiating, you're surviving. This market, it's different.
Sellers are offering things today that they weren't offering a couple years ago. Just ask. Maybe the answer is no. Fine. But at least there's a conversation again.
It's all about conversation and understanding because knowledge is power. And that's the weird conclusion we ended up reaching. Renting can be winning and buying can be winning at the exact same time.
Because there isn't an answer for everybody. There's your answer. And your math has to tell you what your answer is. If your number says rent, rent. But make it count. If your numbers say buy, but I still believe in what we told you last week. Don't sit around waiting for a perfect market that may never show up.
Yeah, because here's the irony. If mortgage rates eventually do come down, guess who's back?
Our couple and everybody else who's sitting right beside them.
Yeah, you're talking about a whole army of potential buyers. And suddenly, the elevator gets crowded again.
Which is exactly why the opportunity we talked about last week can still be real, while renting can still be the right decision for somebody today. Both things can still be true.
At the end of the day, what's good for one may be bad for the other, but it's all about lifestyle. If you're fine going out 5 times a day, 5 times a week, 5 times a month, that's going to change your budget and your buying power. The question isn't, should you wait? The question is, should you pivot with your lifestyle to accommodate homeownership in today's market?
To be or not to be? That is the question which preoccupies our people, Captain Kirk.
All right, let's put the actual numbers underneath all of this of what we spoke about. The 30-year fixed mortgage rate is sitting at around 6.69% this week, up slightly from the 6.6% last week. The median existing home price nationally is at $446,000. Those are today's numbers, not last month's headlines.
Existing home inventory is sitting at about 6.4 months. That's improved, but it still leans towards sellers nationally. And rent growth is running around 2%. So rents have calmed down considerably compared to what we saw a few years ago. But they're still moving.
That's right. And behind that mortgage rate is the 10-year Treasury yield, and it's sitting around 4.71%. It's up roughly 4.65% from late last week. And when that yield moves higher, guess what? Mortgage rates, they tend to feel it.
So no, the war hasn't crashed the housing market, and it hasn't rescued everybody waiting for cheap money either. Which brings us right back to where we started.
You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
So maybe renting is winning for you right now. If it is, that's good. Then win at renting. Use the time, build the savings, and improve your numbers. And put yourself in a better position 12 months from now than you are today.
Because the math still has to work. Last week, we told you the window may be closing. We still believe that. This week, we're adding one more rule. It has to be your window. And the math will tell you whether it is or isn't.
That's right. And if you're sitting there right now thinking, okay, but I don't know what my math says, that's where we can help.
Absolutely. We're not here to force you onto that elevator. And we're not here to tell you to stay off of it either. We're here to help you understand your numbers, what that payment actually does for your life, and whether the decision makes sense for you. Sometimes the answer is buy, and sometimes the answer is keep renting.
That's right. So if you're struggling with that exact decision, reach out to us. No panic, no pressure. We just help you figure out what the math is actually telling you.
And if this episode helped you look at things a little differently, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and send this to somebody who's trying to decide whether they should buy or keep on renting.
Yeah, and buy when the math works and rent when it simply doesn't. Just don't let fear make a 30-year decision for you.
The math will tell you the story. You just have to listen to it.
And that's the show. We'll see you next week.
Girl from the heart of Wisconsin to the waves of Hawaii. Manley and Anthony keep it real, not salesy. Breaking down rates and the truth you need to know. With a little soul and a little homegrown flow. It's the Mortgage 101 podcast where real talk meets home at last. Manly's got that Midwest soul. Anthony brings that island roll when the market swings and you don't go fast.